asked him to take the 60,000-year-old plus healing modality information out. He was an award-winning physicist who had multiple sclerosis. He had heard that the Aboriginal tribes people in the remote parts of Australia had amazing healing abilities. He went into the outback as a quadriplegic. He had about 6 months to live, and he didn't expect to come out again. What the Aboriginal people taught us is that for something to heal 100%, you have to have an alignment of the body, the emotions, and the soul.
The episode you're about to watch has been republished. My podcast channel reaches a lot more people now, and there's certain episodes that have slipped under the radar, and I wanted to bring them up for your attention because I truly feel they are worth listening to. So please be sure to let me know what you think of this episode in the comments below. And of course, let's continue to connect. Let me know where you are in the world and where you're listening and tuning in from. I love reading it. It's amazing, isn't it, that we can do this? And the other thing I want to say as well is find out where we are if you want to put your spiritual boots on and come and join us at one of our 5-day retreats or one-day events around the world. Links are below as well if you want to find out more what we're up to. Much love from me. Enjoy. We are recording. Robbie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
I have to say, we actually run a 12-week program twice a year, and in a mastery program where people start to dive into this work. And Wayne was an amazing man who's on the program, was raving about your book, The Secrets to Aboriginal Healing. And he's like, Guy, you got to read this book. And I'd never heard of it. And I went, bought an Audible straight away. And I have to say, Robbie, I have dozens and dozens and dozens of Audible books. And there's so many I never make my way through. But, you know, I jump in, and I've devoured yours in 2 days. Like, it was just incredible. Wow. I got swept away with the whole thing. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. Why didn't I know about this? Why doesn't the world know about this book? Truly.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did was reach out to you and say, please, I hope you, you know. So
well, the world is resonating. Yeah, it is. And I think that the world is discovering it, and it's now in at least 44 countries. And I know that because I started keeping track of the people who were contacting me, what country they were from. And I was really surprised to see it's at least 44, 45 countries. So it really resonates with people. And you would be surprised how much the Australian Aboriginal people really resonate with people all over the world. You know, I mean, Croatia, Germany, I could just go on and on. It really does have a lot of resonance to them, and it feels like truth to them.
The thing I found myself with it as well, though, Robbie, was like I felt like I was there, with everyone, you know, in the village. It was just that's why I got swept away with it, and the principles and the values and the way they that just held so much reverence. And I was like, I got to go there one day. Like, it was just mind blowing, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's a true experience of my late husband, Gary's journey into the outback. And he had no idea what to expect. And he went into the outback really not expecting to come back out. He had been given a sort of a death sentence by the Western doctors here, and he went to the best doctors in the United States. He was an award-winning physicist who had multiple sclerosis, and he had heard that the Aboriginal tribes people in the remote parts of Australia had amazing healing abilities. So we talk about in Secrets of Aboriginal Healing how he was able to contact a tribe member. And he went into the outback as a quadriplegic. He had about 6 months to live, and he went into the outback and, like I said, didn't expect to come out again. And he brought a tape recorder with him. So the conversations are the exact conversations. And that might be part of the reason it feels, Guy, so truthful, because they're exact conversations. And also when he came back, I think on the plane ride back, he started writing everything out, just everything that happened to him, because it just dramatically transformed him. So he wrote this because the Aboriginal people asked him to take their healing secrets out into the world, because he was a very well-respected physicist, and he had no tainted version or prejudice against the Aboriginals, knew nothing about them. So they asked him to take this 60,000-year-old plus healing modality information out, and he did that. And he did that because they asked him to. So when he passed 12 years later in 2007, and I put the book out really just kind of in memory of him. Didn't expect anything to happen with it. The Secrets of Aboriginal Healing, his journey into the outback and the Aboriginal healing information, and just put it out just as a gesture of love for him, and was really kind of surprised, but not really, that it just took off and it just had a life of its own, because people can feel it, just resonates. It feels like truth to them, and it makes sense. And the reason the Aboriginal people were so generously giving us this information is because they said that we didn't truly, the Western civilization, civilized societies didn't truly understand how healing worked. And that's something that you have learned, I know, through personal experience. We were learning more about the connection between the body, mind, spirit, and healing. And so that's really they felt that we were ready for this information and that it was time. And so this is why I think people recognize the emotions are very connected to the body. You can't separate the two.
You can't, and even science is showing that now. I mean, I was only listening to Dr. Gabor speak the other day, who I had on the podcast last year, and the first thing he opens up with is that you cannot separate the body and the emotions. Yet we Western society, it treats everything like that's the symptom, and let's just treat this mechanically and prescribe and not look at the deeper aspects of it. But I think from the last few years that we've had as well, it's really pushing people into this area of work to start to look. There's got to be more to this, and that's why I think your book. Yeah, the book is a blueprint to that. It's the portal in.
Yeah.
To go,
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love about the Aboriginal people is, and I can't speak to all of them, I can only speak to the ones that I've encountered and that my husband, Gary, encountered. They live with simplicity. And it seems like the more we don't understand something, the more we complicate it. And so they gave us this, like you said, this blueprint. It's very simple. And it outlines, like we were talking about the emotions, how they affect the body. And they gave us the example of you can have, like for Gary, he had a very traumatic, rough, abusive childhood from an alcoholic father. And he got really good with that brilliant mind of his at numbing himself to emotions, until he literally numbed himself physically as well with multiple sclerosis and became, paralyzed. And the Aboriginal people were telling him, it's like, if you don't get to the emotional root, the emotional core, it's like pulling the top of a dandelion. It's just going to grow right back again. You can remove tumors for cancer in the breast area, for instance, that if you don't get to the heart of that emotional core, and we tend to carry grief these are things that science is waking up to all the time. We tend to carry grief in our chest area. And if you have a genetic predisposition for breast cancer or heart problems, and you're holding a lot of grief, or you're closing off your heart, you are creating even more problems. And so the Aboriginals are telling us, you need to get to that emotional root, that emotional core, and uproot it, or it'll come right back again. And this is why sometimes tumors will come back that have been removed surgically, because they still continue to have the same emotions that are very hard and toxic on the body. And our bodies aren't meant to be maintaining some of these levels of stress and anxiety and repression. And so, the science has proven that when you have stress, sustained stress, it affects the autoimmune system. It suppresses it. So that's what the Aboriginal people are helping us recognize, is there is a distinct connection. And if you are immersed in a lot of love-based emotions, gratitude, that creates a different type of body, a different type of cell. And Dr. Emoto has shown us what those cells look like. They're they look like beautiful snowflakes. That helps the body thrive. Whereas fear-based emotions, especially shame and guilt, are particularly
Mhm.
toxic for the body when you're creating them over long periods of time and not releasing them. And so that's something that I think resonates with people.
Absolutely, and I think one of the challenges is, though, Robbie, is that for many people and might not have experienced what it or you speak about the cells, like, might not have experienced love at some deep capacity, so they don't actually know what they're looking for, even though once you're there,
Hmm.
you remember.
Hmm.
And that journey into that space can be terrifying because it's then becomes an unknown. And it's like, oh, but then once we allow it, let it in, and that pressure that's building,
Yeah.
it can rewrite everything.
Yes. And that's one of the things that the Aboriginal tribes people taught us is that we tend to be civilized Western civilizations, whatever you want to call them, we tend to be afraid of certain emotions. And so we repress them or we are numb to them, like Gary had done. And what the Aboriginal people were telling us is that experience these emotions, experience them, but then move on. Right? We tend to hold on to these things and we play these stories back over and over and over, and we're obsessing about them. Whereas the tribes people taught us feel it, but then let it go. Right? So that comes back to
Mhm.
letting go of the past and the future and staying in the present moment. That's where the focus is needs to be. So it feel those emotions, but you don't need to be marinating in negativity.
Totally. But what about it when we are children? And obviously, we haven't been taught and work and dealing with the emotions, and
Hmm.
as parents, we tend to shut those emotions down quite often because we wanted to meet our needs at that moment in time because we are busy and stressed
Yeah.
and have bills to pay, and live Western
Yeah.
society kind
Yeah.
of nurtures that. How much do you feel then? Because obviously with Gary, once he understood having abusive parents and alcoholic dad
Mm.
or whatever it might be, that it's an obvious one when you look back. You go, of course, that was a. But
Mhm.
what about the
Mhm.
what about if we can't remember or we're not sure of, yeah,
Yeah.
if it's not so
Yeah,
obvious the things the
yeah,
body's
that's a
holding.
great question. Well, Gary had not made the connection between his abusive childhood and numbed emotions to the multiple sclerosis, that paralyzation, so to speak. And what helped him was forgiving his father, recognizing that his father was at a level that he was just operating on. He didn't know any better. And who knows what his father had been through, right? So when Gary recognized that this opportunity, and this is the soul comes into this as well. We are a body, mind, soul. And so the soul is presenting you opportunities to move towards love and away from fear, because it's either fear based or it's love based. That's really what it boils down to. So there's opportunities to move towards love, and if the mind tends to be very fear based and negative and can be toxic in that way. So you're learning how to overcome the mind and start coming from the heart more. So Gary learned that his father, whether it was a painful lesson, but it's the painful lessons that are the ones that help catalyst to move forward and to shift and change. Um, Gary learned that his father was teaching him huge lessons in forgiveness and acceptance, and that it was helping him in his soul's growth and evolution. So when things come to you in your life, especially if they keep coming, you keep having this recurring pattern, you want to ask, why is this happening to me? In that, how is it here to help me grow and evolve? Because whatever I'm resisting, it's going to keep coming to help me move beyond it. Okay. And
Mm.
so, I'll give you an example. I lost a dear family member to smoking, and I got really upset with the tobacco companies for selling a toxic, addictive, potentially dangerous product. There's no potential about it. At some point, it can become deadly. And I was upset that some of my family members were still continuing to smoke. So what happened was I found myself surrounded by smokers. I couldn't seem to get away from them. And when I finally accepted, okay, this is their journey. They're learning about what happens when you honor, respect the body or don't, when you nurture it or you don't. This is how they're learning and growing and evolving. And I had acceptance. I didn't necessarily like it, but I had acceptance. When I had that acceptance, then the smokers started going away. I didn't need that lesson anymore. I had mastered that acceptance. And so then, like, that's what the Aboriginal people were telling us. It's like, okay, it comes to you for a reason. Why is it here? How is it here to help you grow and evolve as a soul? Let it go. Okay, what's next? What's next? Whereas a lot of us are afraid of what we have already encountered, and we're afraid of what's next. So it's about learning to move from the heart more rather than being imprisoned by the mind.
One question that keeps coming up, though, is, well, why have I got to grow? I don't want any of this pain. I just want to,
Yeah.
enjoy my day, watch Netflix and just hang out. Like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Eat sugar, right? Have some ice cream. That's a great question. And what I think people need to recognize, and it certainly took me time to recognize, and this is what Gary started to realize after he went into the outback, is that we are souls who come here on this particular planet and are given a body and emotions, and the body and the emotions work together. The body will never lie to you, but the mind will. And so we are given emotions that are much broader range than they are on the other side of the veil. The other side of the veil is imperfection. It's in perfection. And it's stagnant for growth purposes because it's in this perfectionist state. We don't have this broader range of negative, quote unquote, emotions. And I'm not saying negative emotions are bad. I'm saying they're here to teach you, right? And so we come here as a soul because we grow really fast on this planet, because there are so many opportunities left and right in this third dimensional vibration frequency plane existence, and that we are given opportunities left and right because this planet not only gives you a body and a wider range of emotions, but it also provides third dimensional existence, which tends to be more mind-based, tends to be more fear-based. And so the Aboriginals that we were working with were more in fourth, fifth dimensional vibration frequency, showing us how to get there and where we were getting hung up, and how, they're living in love. They're living in extreme gratitude. They're living in simplicity. They're living in service to others rather than service to self. And they're showing us, they're guiding us. And that's what we tried to put in these books, The Secrets of Aboriginal Healing and The Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening. Sort of, again, their blueprint on how to move beyond this third dimensional tendencies that we have, right? This fear-based. And the world is showing us what happens when the minds are in charge and control. And this is about learning how to come with the soul's voice, listening to what the soul's inner wisdom is guiding you, that intuition, that connection to a higher loving one consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, rather than the mind, which tends to be egoic, fear-based, identity-based, that sort of thing. So this is why we come here, guys, because we make huge leaps in growth as a soul, and that's really important.
Yeah, totally. And then that soul is contributing to the larger expansion of the universe, I'm guessing.
It will keep bringing you what you need to master. And so Gary, his soul intended for him to master deeper levels of forgiveness. So he had this abusive father. They had a soul contract together that, he would be provided opportunities to forgive. Okay. And so Gary eventually reached that. And as he started forgiving, he started getting feeling back in his body. And he started to realize this was an opportunity to help me make huge leaps in growth that I couldn't possibly make on the other side of the veil because things are imperfection. But here, there's such diversity. It's like the contrast in a painting. You need the contrast in a painting to see things more clearly. You need the dark and the light. And so we have that here in this third dimensional school, if you will, and we have that dark and light within us as well. So this is why they teach you embrace the dark in you as much as you do the light, because it's all here to teach you something. Just as I needed to learn acceptance of people smoking, that's their journey, that's their classroom, and I chose not to join that classroom because I certainly signed up for plenty of classes on my own. So yeah.
No, makes sense. Total sense. How long was Gary there for?
Surprisingly, very short time. He was there less than 2 weeks. But in that 2 weeks' time, he regained feeling in his body, which he hadn't had for 7 years. He clumsily walked down that airplane aisle on the way back, supporting himself. He had been a quadriplegic for quite some time, and he went back a paraplegic. And he literally was unloaded from the plane as a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, like as cargo. And he came back, and he'll tell you that what shifted more for him than anything was that he was this very scientific, physicist. It doesn't exist, if it can't be proven. Very black and white. There was no gray. And what he learned is that there's a lot of gray, as you know, that can't be explained, but it still exists. And he did go back to the Outback again years later and said, I'm still having problems walking 100%. And the Aboriginal people said, I'm not sure if he went back or if he contacted them, and they said, the rest is up to you. But that comes back to what the Aboriginal people taught us, is that for something to heal 100%, you have to have an alignment of the body, the emotions, and the soul. And what he didn't recognize at the moment was that his soul was not aligned with him healing 100%, because it was part of, again, those challenges, that diversity, present greater opportunities for growth. So it allowed him to grow faster. To what it ended up doing, because he was this globe-trotting physicist, was it allowed him to slow down, right? It allowed him to spend countless hours a day communicating to the other side, or that inner wisdom, which is what the Aboriginal tribes people do. They will spend more than half of their time in, you might call it dream time or meditative state, and they start doing that at age 4, which is how they're so connected. They're taught at a very young age to start quieting the mind and start listening to that inner wisdom and following that, and that's much more real to them where they go in these meditative states. And so that's what Gary learned. And when he came back from the Outback, he started developing these abilities. He started meditating. He started connecting to the other side and doing what the Aboriginal people were doing when he was with them, where he became telepathic. And I think it's interesting, Guy, that the only people who are aware typically that he's communicating to them telepathically were autistic people. They always recognized that he was communicating to them. And it didn't matter where they were. It didn't matter if they were on the other side of the planet, the world. It didn't matter. But he became telepathic. He was able to view inside the body, which is what the Aboriginal people were doing when he was there. He could see energy. He could see tumors inside people. He could see guides and angels. That was new to him. And he was able to communicate to them, to their guides and angels, to understand more about what was going on, and, for instance, what the soul had intended for this person to learn, or, why these things had happened. But so again, to heal something 100%, you have to have the body, the emotions, and the soul on board. And so that sometimes people get frustrated Maybe they don't, maybe they finally aligned the emotions. Maybe the body is aligned, but maybe the soul is not. Or maybe the soul is aligned and the emotions are aligned, but the body is just so far gone it can't repair itself at that point. So that's what the Aboriginals taught us, is that it's an alignment of all three of those.
Incredible. When did you meet Gary, and had you been on your own journey by that point?
That's a loaded question. Yeah. Well, I met Gary. Gary had gone into the outback in 1994. I met him in 2001. And I had been on my own journey. It's not uncommon, when you, again, we're here to make growth. And so I must have signed up for who knows what, right? I've learned to quit saying, what else did I decide I wanted to learn, right? Because I almost died twice. When I delivered my son back in 1985, I had a really tough delivery. It was like 36, 32 hours. And they ended up giving me a blood transfusion. And the blood transfusion was tainted with hepatitis C, which at that time they didn't even know about hepatitis C yet. They just called it non-A, non-B hepatitis. So the hepatitis almost killed me. Then they put me on experimental treatments to take care of the hepatitis, and the experimental treatments, the doctors did, almost killed me. They happened to be doing research here in the Seattle area where I was living at the time. And so at this point, I was left in pretty bad shape. I was in bed, I don't know, 6 months, something like that. I had temporary brain damage from the treatments. I still had the hepatitis raging. I had fibromyalgia now. I had chronic fatigue syndrome. So I was in much worse shape, and the doctors had nothing for me. So this is when, and I didn't know Gary at this point. So this is when I went on my own healing journey. Like Gary, I was determined to stay alive as long as possible because I had a young child. And so I knew that little boy was too young to remember me. So I was just trying to stay alive as long as I could. It ended up healing and completely curing the hepatitis C and all the other things. And the doctors have always followed me. The researchers have always tested me pretty, I get a lot of blood taken for years because they couldn't understand how I had healed it. But I had healed it using just what the Aboriginal people had taught us, right? And so that's one of the keys, the 5 steps that the Aboriginal people tell you is take back your power. Because if I had believed what the doctors told me, I would never have survived. And I'm going to be 68 in a couple months. Actually, in a couple weeks, and I never would have made it to 40. So I took my power back and was determined to find answers. And then I met Gary in 2001. And when he passed in 2008, so he taught me a lot in that time. I was watching him doing amazing healing with people and communicating with guides and angels. He passed in 2007. And then in 2008, I was invited, isn't it suspect, after he dies, I was invited to participate in ceremonies with Aboriginal tribeswomen in Australia, in the remote Australia, because they decided to open up their healing ceremonies to women, white women, and there were probably 24 of us, and I was one of the people invited. I was the one invited from the United States. Again, no concept, no idea. Hadn't published the book yet. And I went into the outback and asked asked them, do I have permission to print this book, Secrets of Aboriginal Healing, and get it out? I wanted to make sure that this is what they wanted, and I had their blessing, and they gave it to me, which was really important to me because I really, really respect what the Aboriginal people have gone through, and I want to make sure that I'm honoring their wishes and respecting them in the highest regards.
Wow. There's a lot there.
There's a lot there.
Yeah. One thought that kept coming through was about Gary, because here he is, this black and white physicist that's just like, this is how it is, and his whole identity is strapped to the academia world, I guess, in putting it one way. But then here he is connecting to guides and spirits.
Yeah.
How did he slot back into normalized world? Were like fellow academic physicians embracing it, or didn't he talk about it? What happened?
No, that's a great question. So he was I mean, he'd been on the cover of physics magazines. He was, awarded and respected, went into the outback, came back dramatically shifted emotionally. It really shook him up. He was able to, when he was in the outback with the tribes people, see guides, see angels. He actually saw a deceased Aboriginal healer there. So he came back and knew that in order to promote what they had told him, he needed to gain more credibility. So he went back and got a doctorate degree in immunology, a degree in nutrition. You can relate to that because the food does impact the body, and practiced what we call psychoneuroimmunology, became a psychoneuroimmunologist, how the body is affected by the emotions. And I think it's very interesting that what the Aboriginal tribes people have been teaching us and telling us, it's all this scientific stuff that's coming out, right? The quantum physics, the psychoneuroimmunology, this is stuff that they've known for hundreds of thousands, for a long, long time. And we're just waking up to it because, we need the scientific proof. So he used that information that they had given him to help people. And I think we both became very passionate after we had healed a number of things. And I certainly became passionate about helping people heal after what I had gone through, waking people up to the fact that they are incredibly powerful beings. They have incredible healing abilities. Their body's constantly healing itself, creating new cells, and waking people up to, just because science doesn't know these things yet, it doesn't mean that you're completely hopeless, that there are things that you can do even if you're doing it by yourself. And so it's about helping people wake up to how to heal themselves. But they have to have that groundwork, that foundation that the Aboriginal people gave us about the emotions and the part that it plays in their life. So the first book is Secrets of Aboriginal Healing, Gary's Journey into the Outback. The second book, Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening, is sort of our journeys together when he came back from the outback, which I think is fascinating, in my journey into healing and helping people. How do you get there? Like you were talking about earlier, how do you get there? And so that's what those books are about, is how to, because I was one of those career-driven working moms driving in the fast lane, couldn't go fast enough, very career-oriented, very stressed out, but loving it. My body hated it. And then but my mind thrived on how many phone calls can I have going at the same time, right? How many balls can I have up in the air at the same time? But I didn't realize how hard that was on the body. And I was really numb to the body, as Gary was as well. So you start paying attention to what's the body telling you? What are the emotions? What's the intuition? What does the inner guidance feel like on what food, what herbs I should be taking to help, heal this? There's a tremendous wealth. All the information you need to know is inside you. And that's what we talk about, how to tap into that. That's what the Aboriginal people taught us, how to tap into that.
It's amazing, isn't it? And because we are so distracted, like we're
Yeah.
amazing at not wanting to face any of the signals that are
Yeah.
screaming at us.
Yeah.
And we just turn the music up louder so we can't hear it on the external world.
Yeah. Yeah. We're very good at distractions. Our mind's so good at distraction. It's like, oh, I'll keep you busy. Yeah.
The first thing that there's one word that keeps jumping out at me from listening to the book,
Mhm.
and I was like, that is gold, and it's willingness, like the number one secret. And why do you think as humans we are yearning to, like, you can often, people say, just help me, I'm but the willingness isn't truly there.
Yeah.
to,
That's
to
that's a great
yeah.
question. That's one of the steps, right, that the Aboriginal people give us, is that you may think you're willing, but you really need to go deep within and ask, am I willing to get better? Am I willing to make changes? Because some people have secondary gain, right? They get more attention. They don't have to have as many responsibilities if they're ill. So you need to ask yourself, am I willing to make the changes necessary? And most of those changes are up here in the mind, right? And I've seen people come to me for help with pages of physical problems. It's like, okay, how bad does it have to get before you're willing to make the changes? And one step at a time, one baby step at a time, but be willing to take that one baby step at least, and start opening to these things that maybe you've been afraid to open up to, or afraid to look at, or suppress. And so that's what I think the Aboriginal people were helping Gary. He was with them. He was with two healers that knew English, because they had brought in a woman who was a healer who was Aboriginal, who could communicate to him. But the tribes people did not speak English, although they were telepathic. And we describe how he learned that they were telepathic in the book, because that was an interesting situation for him. But they were all helping in that healing, where they were helping him become more willing, helping him become more open to emotions that this man had shut down and numbed himself to very effectively for decades. So that's one of the things, that was the first step he needed to go through, is be really willing to start moving towards healing.
Hmm. And with you and your journey, Robbie, the willingness to go there, was there a defining moment when you thought, I'm really ready to look at this? Were you in any shape or form aware that this work was available, that there, like, or were you completely removed from it and it's like, I'm in so much pain, I just have to look at something else?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even know where to start. So here's the way I operate. I almost died once, right, from the experimental treatments, hepatitis, and so I got better. I started, paying attention to what needed to happen, to nurture myself, to really listen to the body and rest. And it always takes some time. Well, it doesn't always, but sometimes it takes a lot more rest, and it's a slower process than you think, but it takes what it takes, right? So I started getting better, and I started going back to work again. And before I knew it, I was sucked right back into that same lifestyle, working way too many hours. We were building a home, had a young child that we were taking care of. And I got sucked back in again, and I crashed again and almost died again. And I can tell you from experience, the second time you almost die, you don't bounce back like you did the first time. And so I've had to realize I cannot go back to that lifestyle again. I've got to make some changes, and I might die. I'm so close to, I can't even function. I was so bad with brain damage at that point. I couldn't finish a sentence because I couldn't remember what I was talking about. This is what had happened now after they put me on this experimental trial of this cocktail of drugs, right, that the doctors had. And now I was in really bad shape. I couldn't remember simple things like, how do you get water out of a tap? How does that happen? Oh, I had no clue how to get toothpaste out of a a little tube, and
Wow.
how do you keep it back in the tube? And then it dawned on me, oh, that little cap, that's how bad I was. And that was where that motivation of having that really young child, that I knew, I'm not going to be around if I don't change my ways. And so that it's not uncommon, Guy, for people to become willing for other people. They may not do it because they have great enough love for themselves, which apparently I didn't, but you have enough love for others. And so you will do it for others. We used to see that all the time in people who would come to us, Gary and I, for help. They're doing this for other people, not necessarily for themselves. So, I mean, that's a start, right? But eventually you learn to love yourself along the way. And that's one of the lessons I needed to learn, is if you loved yourself, you wouldn't do those things. You wouldn't pull all-nighters all the time working. You wouldn't be feeding yourself, I don't know if you have M&Ms there, but the little candies, right? I'm feeding myself all night just to keep myself awake with the sugar as I'm working all night. It's just, you just wouldn't do that if you really loved and respected and honored your body.
So obviously Gary went to the outback, and that was his portal into that world. What was your portal? And then did you have a healer? Did you come across anyone? Like who helped support you then into this world?
Well,
How did that
Gary
work?
woke me up to it. Because I
Oh,
was raised with a very conservative, very religious at the time upbringing where this was totally foreign to me. I was kind of like Gary, didn't exist. And then Gary woke me up to it, and I could see what was going on. I could see what he was doing. This was, I mean, some of it was what we might consider miraculous, but they weren't really. It's just that it was something that we hadn't seen before. So, it started where people were coming to him word of mouth. They'd found out about him, and again, their soul needed to be on board. The emotions and the body needed to be on board. But that was something we were able to teach them, right? So Gary will open me up to that world. And then when I had the opportunity, when I was invited in 2008 to go into the Outback, that opened me up to even more of what this was really about, because I got to experience it firsthand in ceremonies where we created thunderstorms, the energy of all of us together with these tribes people.
wow.
And they don't get together at like 5 or 3 o'clock. They get together when everything is right and aligned. That's the key, is alignment, right? So we created thunderstorms that were so powerful, they kept coming around the campsite. And this was near Uluru. And when we eventually got back, a week later at the hotel, or however long it was, they said they hadn't seen storms like that in a long, long time. I also could feel in these ceremonies with these Aboriginal women, this is what the Aboriginal people know, and this is what Gary realized as well, but this is what I got to feel in those I mean, I knew we were all one. I knew we were all connected, but I got to feel it during those ceremonies. I got to feel that we're all one, we're all connected. It's like everything just kind of rolled into each other. And I also got to feel the love of Gaia for us. She just is passionately loving us, Mother Earth. And this is what the Aboriginal tribes people have never lost, that connection. They're kind of like the original environmentalists. They've always maintained that connection and honored and respected and loved and recognized that we are all connected. But I got to feel that love. I got to feel that oneness. And so that was just in just a brief period of time. So I can't even imagine if you're out there for a long period of time. And people contact me constantly because, like I said, these books are now in over 44 countries. They're always contacting me like, how do I get into the Outback with this tribe or these? And it's like, don't. You don't. This is why they gave us this information, is because they gave us the information. They want to stay remote for a reason. Um, that the information that they gave us is there for you to access, but no, they don't. They don't
Mm.
want to be inundated with people from all over.
I can imagine. Can you imagine that? Oh my God. It's almost
Yeah.
like you're answering my questions before I open my mouth. Honestly, Robbie, I was just about to go there. But
Maybe that was for you, Guy.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's part of me like, oh my, and then it's like, let it go.
Yeah.
With everything that's happened over the years now, we've been through very challenging times.
Hmm.
We're moving into more unknowns, I guess, the way where we are right now. What have you made of it all, from a bigger picture perspective? And do you feel that this is an opportunity for this work to continue to go out there and people actually start to lean into this, so we can all become a much more connected?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that you're asking that, because people are so stressed out about the world that we're in right now. And here's what I'm getting. Here's what I'm being taught and what keeps being reinforced. Remember, we talked about how bad does it have to get before you're willing to let go of the beliefs and the mindsets that are holding you back? These third dimensional tendencies that tend to be fear-based and negative and not loving. And so I had to almost die twice, right? Once was not enough for me. I had to almost die twice to finally open up to things that I was resisting and to make that shift. And Gary had to be, I mean, he had 6 months left to go, right? And before he's realized, I need to make some changes. I don't know what they are, but I need to see things differently and open up my heart. He didn't know that at the time. He just knew he wanted to heal his physical body. And so what's happening worldwide is that things are being amped up to help us shift into a higher frequency of love, to find compassion, to find forgiveness, to find acceptance for somebody who's different than us. These are they're presented in our face so that we can't ignore them and be distracted by them anymore, which is what we've been doing for a long time. And not everybody will take those opportunities, but we are being given huge opportunities right now to move forward. And those who aren't ready to move forward, that's fine. There's love and patience there. If they want to stay in these lower dimensional frequencies, because love is a higher frequency, it's a higher vibration. And the planet is shifting, Gaia, Mother Earth, is shifting into a higher vibration. So you can't stay in these lower vibrations and stay on a higher vibrating planet. It's uncomfortable. So it's an opportunity to move towards love. So that's what's being given, is opportunities to move very quickly to get our attention. We cannot ignore it. COVID is here to shake us out of our apathy, our routines, right? And to wake up to what really matters. So these disasters that are happening, it's an opportunity to find gratitude for where you have, where you are, and realize what really matters. And love is what really matters. And the guiding question is, what would love do? And sometimes love sets up boundaries. Sometimes love sets and says no. But it's about recognizing, starting to move more and more often, as you can, with love and gentleness and patience, more and more often from what would love do? And love would be more in service to others. This is what the Aboriginal tribes people taught us, because they're living in a higher frequency of love. And these lower frequencies of depression, anxiety, keep pulling us back down. And it's time to let go of that and move up into these higher frequencies and dimensions, because this is going to become a fourth dimensional planet at some point. And we need to move up into those frequencies and vibrations to be able to live here and learn at fourth dimensional existence. And that's all described in, well, I have a couple more books. There's 4 of them, but it's described in great length in my latest book, Angels in Waiting, the different dimensions and how to connect to your guardian angels and how they're here to assist. Because we've never had that level of assistance before, because we've never gone through these kind of times before, whereas many of us as possible are hoping to shift into these higher frequencies of love. And this is why this information is coming out from the Aboriginals about, the angels. That is all in there as well. It's about, again, recognizing what the mind is doing and how to come from the heart.
Totally. The feeling I get as you're speaking that, for people listening to this, for some people, even the word guardians, angels, or guides could be triggering, because they're like, well, that doesn't exist. I'm living through my
Yeah.
my 5 sensory experience. And then it's like, well, how do you know? And
Yeah.
just to wrap up the podcast there, I just want to touch on that for a moment, because it's been jumping out of me as you mentioned it through the podcast. So what are your feelings? What do they exist? How do they exist? What are their purpose? How do we know? Like, can you just speak to that for a moment?
Yeah. Well, Gary learned when he was in the outback about angels. He learned about them. He was able to see them, and that's what he came back from the outback and started connecting more to that, and recognized that there. And that's why I wrote 2 books about angels. The last 2 books have been about angels. Angels in Waiting is really presenting that information, that every single person, whether you believe in them or not, has a guardian angel there by their side, lovingly attentive to them 24/7 from their first breath to their last breath. And this was all new to me. It was through Gary that I learned about this and experienced it firsthand. And Gary learned it from the Aboriginal people, and they learned it because they've had that connection. They've not lost it. And so I talk about, there's tremendous help available to you. You're not designed to be doing this alone. You don't need to be doing this alone. You certainly can. It's a free will planet. That's the beauty of it. It's a free will planet. But there's so much help available to you if you ask, because it's a free will planet. They won't just step in. And so I talk about how I learned about it, how it's changed my life dramatically. To me, that's a big game changer, Guy, is when you start tapping into the help that's available to you, this tremendous loving assistance. There's so much love, it's beyond what we're able to comprehend. But they have certain laws that they have to abide by. And so we talk about how to work with them, how to get their assistance, how to, they can help you let go of these things. They can help you make leaps in growth. They can help you, heal. They can help you with all of these things, but it's a free will planet. They will not just step in and intervene unless you ask. And so I talk about in Angels in Waiting how to do that, and how to recognize when it's guidance from them versus your mind, and that whole thing, and even help from loved ones, because I do classes, and it's amazing how many people have connections to the other side from people who have passed over. Their loved ones, how they've sent them signs, and everybody has a story, but they haven't always necessarily connected all the dots. So that's what we've tried to do with these books, is connect the dots for people.
Yeah.
Get the information out.
Yeah. I'm a big believer that the universe will meet you halfway if you're willing to meet it there. And
Yeah.
and so we have to action the steps and start to lean in and trust. And from that,
Yeah.
but our attention is so distracted and caught up and stressed. We just continually fixate on a small percentage of our reality, which continues to feed our problems, as opposed to just entraining the body and the awareness to have the ability to look beyond just the senses, or feel beyond that, and start to work with a greater aspect of ourselves that we've cut ourselves off from, and then nurture that side of things, and then we go there,
Yeah. And step outside of that. I mean, that's what's going on right now, is we're being forced outside of our normal thought patterns and routines, which is what we need to start waking up and moving out of the box that we've kind of imprisoned ourselves with.
I got one last question for you, Robbie, to wrap up the podcast.
Okay. I could do this all day.
I've been loving every minute, mate. It's been fantastic. With everything we've covered today, what would you like to leave the listeners to ponder on?
Oh, goodness. There's so many things, I think what I would like to impart to them is that they have tremendous healing ability. And we tend to give our power over to what science currently knows, the doctor that we've encountered. Take your power back and recognize you have tremendous healing ability. Your body wants to heal. And so recognize how to partner with that body. Pay attention to which emotions are going to be helping you create a thriving body versus one that's pulling you back and creating cells that aren't really effective. So I think I want to give hope to people that I really did not think when I was in my early 30s and deathly ill. I never thought I'd hit 40. And like I said, in a couple of weeks, I'm celebrating 68 and loving my little grandchild, of all things. Just, I never thought I'd see that day. So yeah, there's a lot of hope out there.
Amazing. And where can we send everyone, Robbie, if they want to get your books, your work?
I put a lot of free information up on my website, because my passion, like we said, is getting this information out to help as many people as possible. The books are available up there. They're available all over the world. But so if you go to my website, holzwellness.com, HOLZ as in Z, WELLNESS.com, holzwellness.com. There's a lot of information up there that's free. And the book is up there as well. And there's an online healing course. There's meditations. There's a lot.
Amazing.
I think there's quite a bit.
I'll make sure there's links in the show notes for you as well. And
okay.
Robbie, just thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for all that you do. I mean, the moment I turned the camera on, you were just a radiant beacon of light, like positivity as soon as you got on the call. It's been an absolute joy to meet you and have this conversation with you. And I'll certainly keep my intention at heart to allow your work to get out there far and wide from this end too, because I think it's critical reading.
Thank you. And thank you, Guy, for the work that you do, because you do fill in the blanks for people and help them recognize the connections. And so thank you. It does make a difference.
You're welcome. Thanks, Robbie.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.